Hey, Coach, I know when we talked earlier this summer, we talked about wanting to add another forward, two parts, you're able to find one in Camille. One, what was it like for you to be able to actually land her? And two, how does she change kind of what your team looks like moving into next year now?
Well, first of all, I think the good Lord looked down on me and said, "Okay, you dumb butt, you've totally messed up this portal thing. Here, let me help you out a little bit." So, yeah, Camille's somebody we recruited out of high school, and had a good relationship with. It was an unusual situation, but she was able to apply to a few universities she was interested in, and fortunately, we were one of them, and get accepted and all that. And I think pretty quickly, she made it clear that she wanted to be at NC State. Uh, you can also look at the fact, we have one forward on our roster really in Maddie Cox. And so there'd be a great opportunity to come in and make an impact. And so it's a perfect fit from that standpoint. And again, just really fortunate the way things worked out. And we're excited about getting her over here. I think she's going to be somebody you can, goodness, she's a walking double double, and uh, did that at a high level, and so exactly what we needed, and excited about the opportunity to work with her.
Jaden and then Corey, you can follow.
Yeah, because the process was a little bit different with her, in terms of like when y'all were allowed to talk to her about being on the team, what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, she had a person that worked with her from a recruiting service in Texas, that had kind of reached out to the three or four schools that she had interest in, and let us know about it. And then I tell you what, the other thing that helped, Vanderbilt's compliance sent out some information to Camille, and then they shared it with us, basically giving you a layout of how everything had to work. And again, biggest thing, we could not talk to her until she was accepted at the university. So when I got the email and information from Vanderbilt's compliance, I went straight to our compliance people, our individual sport, Jake Cunningham, and then also Kerry Doyle, who's overall the compliance here at NC State. I gave them both copies of it, shared it with them, and obviously let academics know, because they would ultimately, have to be involved with that if we had a player. But then we were kind of out of it until she went through the process and got accepted. Then, of course, we were notified, and then we were able to start talking with her. And again, we were fortunate. We had a relationship there. She didn't even, again, wasn't a very long, drawn out process. And like I said, just a miracle the way it all worked out.
Coach, looking back before that as well, with you guys adding another piece,
Yeah.
obviously, back from UConn, what was that process like, and how different was that for you? And then what have you seen from her early on
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, Cadence, again, someone we recruited out of high school, and knew pretty well. She It's ironically, when she went in the portal, I tried to call. I had her old number, so I don't know that they even knew we had called initially. And she had some other schools that she was working with. Fortunately, they decided to let us in then, maybe a little bit late, and get a visit down here. And yeah, I mean, again, someone long, athletic, can shoot the three, great family. They all came down. She did come for a visit, and with all her family, she's got a lot of brothers and sisters, and they're all really good basketball players as well. And Again, I think she just realized from a standpoint of, opportunity, but also the success our programs had. And I'll say, in Camille's case, I think having two players drafted in the first round with Sanaya and Isaiah didn't hurt any, because obviously these kids have aspirations of playing at the next level. So, but yeah, Cadence, again, somebody, she's looked really good in workouts, shot the ball really well. She played a lot her freshman year at UConn. Then they were able to get some people healthy, and also brought in some new players. And so her role kind of changed. And so I just think she was looking for an opportunity. I've talked to Gino, had good things to say about her. Same way Vanderbilt, talked to Shea Ralph. So, we feel real good about where we are with them. And I think it's, like I said, we filled a couple of real needs, and I'm very comfortable at 11. For a while there, when we were at 9, I was getting ready to call Elliot and see if we could share the Pac-9 brand. Luckily, we didn't have to do that. So,
And well, I wanted to ask you too. I mean, Cadence, going back to her freshman year, her best game so
yeah,
far, at the college level was
yeah,
against you guys. I mean,
yeah.
how much did y'all talk about that? And I guess how comfortable does she seem in Reynolds being back there now?
Yeah, tried to say, hey, you play really well in this building, So hopefully that'll carry over. Her parents, we joked about that when they came to the game. Obviously, it was early season game. For some reason, they wore red that day, both of them, her parents, and so the other Connecticut parents were giving them a really hard time about, what are you doing? But maybe it was a foreshadowing of things to come. Who knows? But yeah, I joked with Cadence. Again, we recruited her out of high school, so one of the threes she hit right in front of our bench, she turned and yelled "boom." So I hope we get to hear a lot of "boom" this year.
Mitchell, and then Noah, you can follow.
Hey, Coach. I just wanted to follow up on something. I'm here at ACC Football Media Days, and Jim Phillips, during his press conference yesterday, said that he felt like most of the women's basketball coaches in the conference were against expanding the NCAA tournament. I was just kind of wondering, if you were one of those coaches that's against that, and kind of what maybe some of those conversations with the other coaches in the league were like about the pros and cons and expanding the tournament.
Yeah, I don't know that we talked about it a whole lot when we were at our meetings, and so it's kind of been a separate deal. I went back and forth between staying where we're at, maybe expanding to 72. I kind of went back and forth on that. So I'm good with whatever they decide. I didn't. What I was trying to find out, and I never really got an answer, is what would the bracket look like?
Mhm.
How much would it add? How would those other 4 teams fit in? And would it add an extra game, or would that be determined in the play-in games? So I never really got an answer on that. But I'm obviously whatever everybody decides, I'm for it. But I don't know that I've put a ton of thought into it, to be honest.
And just a quick follow-up to kind of stay on the tournament. I know last year that I think Gino Ariema and Kim Mulkey and Vic Schaefer, they were some of the coaches that were kind of complaining loudly about the double regional
Yeah.
two-site format, 2 sites instead of 4. Having had a team that's been to that second weekend now several years in a row, do you have any thoughts on that, the pros and cons of 2 sites versus 4?
Yeah, I see their side of it definitely. We've gone to Portland, Oregon, and then we went to Washington, Spokane last year. So we've traveled across the country both times, as did Connecticut. They were out there both times as well, and that is hard. It's a big, obviously, not only when you go out there, 3 hour time difference, but then when you go to the Final Four, that's a pretty quick turnaround, and you've traveled all the way across the country. I definitely see that side of it. The other side of it is, if y'all remember a few years ago, we were a number one seed and we had to go to Connecticut. And even though it wasn't on their home court, it definitely was. We definitely knew where we were, and obviously we lost in double overtime in a game that would send you to the Final Four. So that was a tough way to go. So I think four would probably be better, but I think maybe if there is, and I know it's based on seeding and stuff, but to me, if there's a local team, you don't let them play, you know, real close to their campus. Maybe find a happy medium. You don't have to go all the way to Washington or whatever, but hey, let's at least make you get out of your home state. So I see both sides of it.
Mhm. Thanks, Coach.
Uh-huh.
Which when you look at Camille and the way she plays, what sticks out to you the most, kind of when you see her on the basketball court in her game?
Yeah, super athletic. She's a dog. I thought when we lost to LSU in the Sweet 16, I felt like we were lacking a little bit of that, inside, getting boards, defending, things like that. I think she'll do that well. Obviously, she averaged 20 points a game. She's obviously able to score the ball as well. We like to play up tempo. We like to run. I think she's very good at that. One thing impressed me when you look at most forwards, post players, most of them are going to have more turnovers than assists. She actually has more assists than turnovers. Tells me she's willing to share the ball some. And again, we had a great need for that position. I just think it's, like I said, it's a perfect fit. But we like to spread the floor out, attack, let them play, let our players have opportunities, and I think Camille will be really good in that system.
I mean, just to follow up, you said you guys recruited in high school. Did she ever take a trip to NC State recruiting wise then? And when do you kind of expect her to be on campus now?
Oh, I'll be honest, I kind of messed up. I didn't probably didn't offer in a timely fashion. Nowadays, you do that pretty early, and so she kind of made her decision, and before we got her on campus or anything like that.
Todd?
Yeah, Coach, we talked to Zam a little bit ago. What does that say about her coming from a small school that she came from to NC State and being as successful as she is? And is it tougher for kids coming from those small schools?
Yeah. Obviously she was able to make an impact her first year. Sometimes that's hard. Kayla Jones on our staff now, KJ, came from the same area code as Amaria, and it took her a while. Never forget. Individual meeting. She, we had a discussion and basically asked me if I could be a little less hard on her, push her a little less, whatever, and a little less. And then I said, well, can you maybe go a little harder? And so I just think, when you're at a smaller school, it's a big jump. You got to be able, and it's a big jump for anybody to go from a high school to, I think we finished in the top 10, 6 out of the last 7 years. So when you're playing at that level, it's a big jump. But obviously we've had players do it, and Samaria's, definitely. And I thought she was playing really well till she got hurt. She had a big game against Louisville, and the next practice she dislocated her thumb on her shooting hand. So we're expecting her to come back stronger than ever here this year. But she got a lot of confidence, and that's what it takes. You got to believe you can get it done.
JC and then Jaden.
You mentioned the big jump for freshmen. Your two freshman guards that you signed, what skill sets do they bring that you think that they'll be able to navigate those waters this year?
Yeah, they've looked really good in our workouts. Destiny Lunan goes by Kashi. Super athletic. One of the best defenders coming out of high school, probably in the country. I think some people questioned her ability to shoot with range. I know I went and saw her play last year right before Christmas in Phoenix, and she scored about 35 and hit 4 or 5 threes. So as long as she does that, I think we'll be okay with her offensive skills. But she can handle it, get downhill really well. And like I said, I think she's very capable of knocking down the three as well. Adelaide, known her obviously being from the Winston-Salem area, I've known her for a long time. Just ability to score the ball. I think she's another player that changed her body, which I think that's always a big thing. We were talking about jumping from high school to college. I think a couple of years ago, she made a real commitment to not just the basketball training, but also the weight room, conditioning, all that. I know she was one of our top ones when we did a conditioning test a week or two ago. But both of them, I think have an opportunity to have the length to come in and contribute. And like I said, Adelaide can score at all three levels, shoot the three deep. Big thing with her is going to be guarding the ball. And big thing with Kashi is going to be shooting the ball. But I've seen great things from both of them in those areas. And so I think, they're going to make an impact.
You mentioned earlier a little bit about missing some players in the portal and just kind of how all of that played out this year. How much of that do you think was players feeling like maybe this wasn't the best fit for them? Do you feel like was there a money aspect? What kind of went into that stuff?
Yeah, I probably again, I'm not a very good GM, is what I found out. I probably maybe in some cases underestimated the amount of money that it would take to add a player. And then some of it is, hey, I like my players better, and I don't know that I want to, dole out that much money in some of their cases. And then some of them, like I said, was just, maybe I didn't do a good job. We're fortunate, until July 1, we were able to have the collective help us some. And then now revenue shares kicked in. But like I said, I just probably wasn't a great GM. My priority, though, I can tell you from day one, was to keep our players. And that was my number one priority. And that's what we tried to get done first. We were very fortunate. We kept, the core of our team. We did have one or two that, again, I think probably playing time wasn't exactly the role, wasn't exactly what they wanted. So we did have that, but we kept the core, and that was my priority. I thought I'd have enough money left to get maybe three players. And as it turned out, it might have been enough to keep one. I mean, to go out and get one. So it's just a different era. And so, like I said, I'm learning. But hey, like I said, the Lord shined down on me, and I couldn't pick a better one. Camille's big time player. So we're very fortunate to add her to this roster is really exciting. It's got me fired up. I'm a stallion. I may have another 10 years in me. Who knows?
So you feel better about the front court going into this season than you did last year?
I'm not saying that necessarily, but yeah, I feel better than I did a month ago. How about that? A lot better. Frozen margaritas for everybody.
Okay, we'll go Rob and then Noah.
Yeah, Wes, I have a two-part question, sir. Number one, the characteristics that players, as they navigate their college career, they have to have growth, development, expand their roles. What characteristics and traits do players need to have to do that? And do you think players like Jones, Awu, Trigger, they have those characteristics?
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of our staff. Our coaches do a really good job player development and working with these players. And again, you look back, y'all ask about how tough is it a freshman coming in, small school, whatever. You look at where Isaiah James was her freshman year and even her sophomore year. And we were so fortunate that Isaiah was loyal and was willing to work and stick it out. And then boom, look what happened. So I do think our staff does a really good job working with these players and helping them get better and preparing them for the next level. and that definitely helps in recruiting when players see that. Uh, yeah, I think Tilda's shown great improvement. Heck, she made the Swedish national team this year. First time she's done that. So that's the team that, if they qualified, would go to the Olympics. So that's impressive to make that team at her age. Now she's playing for the under 20 team. So she's over there all summer doing that. Lorena, again, hadn't been playing basketball that long. Seen great strides in her. We need to get her healthy. She's still hindered some by a knee, but hopefully we get her completely healed up. And I love her upside, just her body, her strength. And she's, athletic, can move with that same length. So that's good. And then who was the other one you mentioned?
It's all players. You got Jones, you got Collier, and players like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just in all their cases, they got to want it. They got to work and put the time in. We can work with them, but they got to also have that drive. And we've been fortunate to have a lot of players that have that drive and want to get better.
And my last question, sir, I think you mentioned the top 10, 6 of 7. I know it's Sweet 16 is something like that too. Do you ever talk about standard at NC State? And if you do, what type of conversations do you have? Do kids embrace standard and wanting to not just maintain it, but enhance it?
Yeah, I hope so. I think our players, I'll be honest, most of our team was, pretty excited about the addition of Camille because they want to win and they realized we needed some depth there. Needed some length, some athleticism. So yeah, I think they all understand that. We've been very fortunate and have been on a good run, and we want to maintain that. And what is it they say? When the tide rises, all the boats are lifted. Hopefully, our tide keeps rising, and everybody's boat gets lifted.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a couple of times you're not a great GM. Football and men's basketball both have hired GMs in the past few years. Is that something you've thought about or talked to Boo about adding to your staff?
Yeah, I don't know. I think football, definitely you got to have a GM. You got potentially 105 guys on scholarship, and then the financial standpoint of staying under the cap and what you can afford to spend at certain positions, I can't even imagine. So I think definitely you got to have a GM there. But I think at any of our sports, at the end of the day, the head coach has to make a decision. What you have to work with, and you got to figure out, as best you can, try to do what's fair, but also trying to be true to your team as far as being the best you can be. I think at the end of the day, in our situation, the head coach has to make the final decision of how it all fits. You can say a GM's doing that, but at the end of the day, the head coach, is the one. What is it? Parcells used to say, if you're going to ask me to coach the team, cook the dinner, you ought to let me buy the groceries. At some point, you're going to have to make those decisions. So, we kind of do it as a staff and talk those things out.
JC?
So this is more of a big picture question about team takeover. I believe you've now had 3 players, maybe, between Jakaya and Mimi and now Samuels. Obviously, their NC State men's program has recruited that program actively.
Yeah.
Is there a commonality that you see when you get players from the DMV or just
Yeah.
a certain toughness about them?
Well, first of all, there's great talent in the DMV, and then there's also great talent in Team Takeover. They do an awesome job. I was in Chicago this weekend, and in I think maybe the game to go to the Final Four, they won that game. It was unbelievable back and forth game against the Tennessee Flight, who has a lot of talent as well. But yeah, those coaches have been really good to us, and as you mentioned, Jakia and now to add Cadence, I guess Mimi played for him as well. Mimi, of course, was at a couple other schools before we got her, but again, there's great talent up there, and Team Takeover is very well ran, organized, well coached. So when they do come to college, they're prepared.
All right. It looks like no one else has any other questions. Thank you, Coach, and thank you everyone for jumping on. I know it's a busy time of year with football coming up, so I appreciate y'all.
So, the great thing is I did go out to celebrate last week and played golf. And then when I hit a bad shot, I just say, that's okay. We got Camille. So, it'll all work out. Thank y'all.
Thank
Thanks.
you, sir.
Great day.